Yo, what if I told you Ryan Coogler might have made a film so prophetic it's reading the music industry like scripture? And what if I told you Sean Diddy Combs is living out the villain's origin story of the film and he didn't even star in it? Yeah, I said it. This is cinematic alignment. What up, y'all? It's your girl Sakinah Iman. I'm 25-time award-winning filmmaker and actress. And your favorite dot connector, truth teller, dream disruptor. And today, I'm breaking down why Ryan Coogler's Sinners is not just a film. No, it's a mirror. And baby, what it's reflecting is unholy. We're talking real life vampires, vanity, violence, and a whole lot of industry bloodsucking. I want to talk about a few themes here. I want to talk about good versus evil, atonement, the vampires or the industry manipulators, the say yes, what the guitar in the film represents, because that's a powerful point. And I want to show you who each character in this film is mirroring in reality. I also want to talk about the schmexual, I can't say the actual words, schmexual politics and the grooming of it all, the industry conspiracies, the whole lot. We're going to talk about Cassie, we're going to talk about Lauren London. It's going to get real, y'all. So buckle up, get your popcorn out, and possibly your legal pad. Let's get into this art meets allegation deep dive. Now, quick disclaimer. Everything I share in this video is my opinion. All the references to Sean Diddy Combs is based on public reports and remain alleged. And as for Sinners, every theme, metaphor, and meaning I unpack is my own artistic interpretation. I'm not here to state facts. I'm here to spark deep thought. This is Realer Than Real, Sinners, Saints, and the Diddy Effect. Now let's get into it. And mofos wanna act like they don't know. Oh yeah. Okay. Now, in Sinners, the battle is literal. Vampires represent evil forces, while the music and ancestral memory represents good. In the Diddy case, we see a similar allegory. A beloved mogul now alleged to have weaponized power, money, and manipulation, perhaps becoming the very monster he once claimed to fight against. Diddy, once the orchestrator of musical dreams, is now seen as a kind of modern-day Remick, the head vampire. Not a fang-wielding demon, but a charismatic, powerful figure who allegedly preyed on youth, talent, and vulnerability. Now think about it. The film's vampires couldn't enter without an invitation, ever. Neither can the perpetrators in real life. There's always a yes, a signing, a deal, a seduction. It's the old adage, good versus evil. Let's talk about atonement and what that means. So, Sinners premiered on Good Friday. All right, a day symbolizing death for the sake of salvation. Atonement or reckoning, redemption. This is not a coincidence. Ryan Coogler premiered the movie on Good Friday for a reason. Now, let me read out what the Good Friday day represents, right? Good Friday, also known as Great Friday, Holy Friday, or Sorrowful Friday, is a major Christian observance that commemorates the crucifixion and death of Jesus Christ. It is a time for Christians to reflect upon his suffering and willing sacrifice to atone for the sins of mankind. So let's talk about atonement. A day symbolizing death for the sake of salvation, reckoning, redemption. This is no coincidence that Ryan Coogler put out the Sinners film on Good Friday. Now let's talk about Diddy's public crucifixion. His public crucifixion is not just happening in the court of law, but in the court of culture. The Sinners film overall calls for this question. Will we continue letting the devils we know feed on our silence? Or will we atone by choosing truth? Now, we see this multiple times. Multiple people in Diddy's case come forward with this truth that was eating them alive for the longest time. They were silent for the longest time. Look at Q from Day 6, and we'll show a quick clip from that. Every group member of Day 6, one of Diddy's Making the Band bands, from Making the Band, every single member of that band cried in this interview. Grown men crying, all because of Diddy's doing. Especially Q.
Me a ecstasy pill, and she says,
is that what she said it was?
Yeah, she said it was ecstasy, and she said it was from Puff to give to me. They were laughing as I woke up out of my sleep, screaming. I felt like they were trying to hurt me, or Diddy was trying to maybe sacrifice me that night.
So you're saying after this particular incident, you left?
I don't know why somebody that evil would.
She broke my glasses?
I don't get it. I don't know why somebody would do that to a talented, passionate people.
Yeah.
Like, you know, we talented, passionate people. I don't understand. No, it's okay, bro. I don't understand why someone would sit down and think about hurting someone. I don't know. Or laugh about it after they do it, you know. Like, I don't get it. That's why I said none of them are innocent. I didn't mean to go there. I'm so sorry.
It's all good. It's
I'm
all
so
good.
sorry.
This is real. And
we gotta take a break.
yeah, let's take a break.
Oh man. Yeah.
Q.
Now, when we talk about atonement and reckoning, we're talking about something sacrificial. And Q and the entire group kept talking about how their time with Diddy was something was sacrificial. right? They felt the need that they had to sacrifice a part of their soul to get something in return. And therefore they stayed silent for all these years. They didn't choose the truth, which they are choosing now, which is coming to light. The dark is coming to light now. Someone once said, I would rather be right in hell than silent in heaven. And this echoes across both realities. Silence has protected the wolves in sheep's clothing far too long. And Sinners breaks the silence with art. Cassie broke it with her testimony. Let's talk about the true vampires in the industry manipulators. In Sinners, vampires drain the life for immortality. So Remick, he wants to live forever. He also wants to get back to this life, this reality that he once had in his youth, right? So he's trying to hold on to his youth. In real life, many believe Diddy drained the creative spirit, safety, and freedom of his artists to maintain power. The metaphor extends just as Remick used others' talents and memories to build his empire. Diddy was accused of feeding off of these artists. All of the artists that he's discovered, right? From Biggie to a whole host of people from making the band, Mace, Cassie, the list goes on of all these artists that he drained. Usher, Justin Bieber, the identities, reputations, and pain, allegedly manipulating their loyalty through seduction, coercion, and ritualistic control. Both Remick and Diddy offer gifts with strings, beautiful parties, right? Think about the beautiful parties, the access, the glamour, but it all comes at a blood price. Remick was doing these rituals where he said, come on, look at us. Look at what we have to offer here. I'm offering you life forever, right? Which in our reality, having all the money you can ever have wanted, having all the fame you could ever have wanted is equivalent to sort of living forever, being forever young. So he's offering this full, abundant life and saying, all you need to do is come with us, right? Both Diddy and Remick share one chilling tactic. When you refuse to submit, when you deny their control, they don't just come for you, they come for the ones you love. In Sinners, Remick plays polite until someone says no. The moment Grace refuses his invitation to join his twisted clan, he drops the charm and makes it personal. He threatens her daughter, point blank. He says to her, if you won't play along, I'll take Lisa out at the shop. That's not seduction. That's psychological warfare, because that thing drove Grace crazy. It drove her so far as to completely kamikazeing her life. And according to the allegations in the Diddy case, this isn't fiction, it's a pattern. Nearly every survivor who's come forward describes the same chilling behavior. If they don't comply, Diddy didn't just threaten their careers, he threatened their families. He weaponized fear at the most vulnerable point, their bloodline. Both Remick and Diddy mastered that same dark strategy. Break the spirit by targeting the heart. They didn't need chains, they used loved ones as leverage. That's not just manipulation, that's predatory control at its most intimate level. And that's where the line between the Sinners movie and reality start to blur. I want to talk about something even deeper, right? Let's talk about some of the characters for a second. We already established that Diddy is Remick, right? But there's also other characters in this film that I want to talk about who they represent. There's the twin brothers, right? There's Smoke and Stack. Let's first talk about Smoke and Stack. Now, Smoke is the responsible one. He's the twin that's disciplined. He's the twin that's a visionary. He's the twin that truly dedicated, responsible. He's the war hero. He represents blue, and it makes sense because he wears blue. In the colors of the flag, red, white, and blue, which I saw that Ryan Coogler referenced the colors red, white, and blue often in this film, right? Which makes a lot of sense. But when you think about Smoke and Stack, Stack wore a red hat constant all the time. You always saw him in red, and even at the end of the movie, you saw Stack in red. And Smoke always wore blue and his blue hat, right? And when you think about what those colors represent, so when you think about the color blue and what it signifies, blue signifies vigilance, perseverance, and justice, right? It represents the constant vigilance required to protect and uphold the principles of freedom and justice for all. Now, Smoke was the one who provided the vigilance and justice in the film, especially towards the end, bringing justice back to his people for taking out the owners who sold him a property meant to tragically bring genocide to his people. And now think about the color red, right? Yes, the color red does signify valor and bravery, right? Which Stack really had those qualities. It does represent courage and resilience, right? But it also represents the wild card. The red represents true blood, sin, lust, schmecks, right? Schmexual relations. Okay, so let's think about those two things. All right, now when you think about two top brothers in the industry who are on top in the music industry, right, and one represents like focus and vigilance and discipline and a visionary, and the other one represents this like the charm, the suave, the wild one, right? Because even Smoke was talking about, he was like, at one point he told Sammie, he said, yeah, watch this troublemaker, watch this fool, he gonna cause trouble. How you gonna tell a little boy to watch a grown man, right? That's how wild Stack was, right? On top of him being with he ended up being with the girl who's considered the snow bunny or whatever you want to call it, right? The one who's considered more of a taboo, right? which was Mary in the film. So let's think about that. Two brothers, one is wild, you know, dating all the snow bunnies, and one who's vigilant and disciplinary, focused, and is not as sloppy, right? And is with somebody who's considered stable, right? And you know, melanated, right? not to bring color and race into it, because it's not technically about that. It's about what these characters and these ideologies represent, right? These ideals and these people represent, right? So let's say that Stack is Diddy, right? He's another form of Diddy. And let's say that Smoke is Jay-Z, right? Let's think about it in that way. Jay-Z being the disciplined visionary, right? Who doesn't get sloppy, okay? He's with a more holistic, you know, woman who represents, she's already solidified in this community, right? She's considered a healer or a powerful woman in her own right in this community, right? And then let's say Stack is a form of Diddy, the charming, beloved, you know, powerful, but careless, indulgent. He gets caught up, right? Now, if we dig deeper, way deeper into the esoteric and even etymological layers of how Smoke and Stack are true symbolic mirrors of Jay-Z and Diddy, this next breakdown makes the parallels between Sinners and the Diddy case feel like less of a coincidence and more like divine revelation. Let's start with the twins' real names in the film, Elijah and Elias Moore. You'll notice only people close to them, like Annie, refer to them by their true names. Smoke is Elijah, Stack is Elias. And here's the wild part. Elijah and Elias aren't just similar, they're the same name. Elijah is the Hebrew form of Elias, being the Greek form of the name Elijah. Different languages, same root, same meaning, so technically they have the exact same name. Elijah Moore, Elias Moore. Two men, one essence, twins, literally and symbolically. And to make that symbolism crystal clear, Ryan Coogler cast Michael B. Jordan to play both brothers. The same actor, two roles, one face, two destinies. That's not just clever casting, that's layered storytelling. It's Coogler saying, this is a split soul, a mirrored legacy, a divine twinship divided by choice. Now let's take it one level higher. Both of their names start with an E, and both of their street names start with an S, Smoke and Stack. So the same initials, two EMs, two S's, reflecting one another like spiritual opposites or mirrors. And let's take it even deeper. The meaning of Elijah in Hebrew scripture, Elijah means my God is Yahweh. The name represents resistance to idol worship, the one who calls out false gods, the one who confronts corrupt power. In a film about vampires, creatures that literally feed off others, that live forever through the worship of submission and submission of others, that name couldn't be more deliberate. Now let's mirror this with the real world. Jay-Z, Diddy. What are their real names? Their real names are Sean Carter and Sean Combs. The same name. Same first name, same last initials, same exact initials, SC. That's not a reach. That's a match. Let me say that again. That's not a reach. That's a match. But it goes even deeper. It goes even deeper. Both men, Jay and Diddy, were born on the 4th of the month. Jay-Z, December 4th. Diddy, November 4th. And if you know me, you know how deep I go with numerology, probably deeper than I should. And the number 4 in numerology is all about structure, foundation, discipline, legacy, the builders, the architects, the empire makers. So here we are, two Seans, two SCs, two 4s, two icons, both with the same divine blueprint building empires together. Diddy and Jay, they might not share blood, but they've moved through the industry as metaphorical twins. Smoke and Stack, Elias and Elijah, two parts of one name, one dream, but two very different choices in how that dream is pursued. One stayed grounded, protects his business. The other gets seduced, messes around, not to be trusted. One resists idol worship. The other becomes the idol. Sound familiar? So when I say Sinners might be exposing more than just fictional vampires, I mean look again. Because Jay and Diddy, they don't just run the game. They are the big twins of the industry. And Coogler made it plain by casting one actor, Michael B. Jordan, to carry both spirits identical. If not in flesh, then absolutely in essence.
Here's where it gets even murkier. Before all this madness, Jay and Diddy were tight. Like, real tight. Jay was one of the only two people allowed to call Diddy by his real name, Sean. The other was Diddy's mom. That's not casual friendship, that's inner circle status. Their bond was public too. Jay and Beyonce used to host Diddy at their annual Rock Nation brunch every year. Dude was all over their site. Then the Cassie lawsuit dropped and boom, Diddy got iced out like he never existed. But cutting ties with Diddy after the fact didn't stop people from putting two and two together. One story that had folks raising eyebrows came from rapper DaBaby. He claimed that back in 2020, he was invited to a super private party at Diddy's place in LA. And guess who else was in the room with only a handful of other people? Jay-Z and Beyonce. DaBaby made it sound like an exclusive elite gathering, but the vibe he described? Yeah, it gave off freak-off energy. And that's where things started clicking for the internet detectives. Now, here's what's truly wild. Jay-Z himself has some seriously questionable history that people are finally starting to talk about again. Years ago, he was rumored to have had a relationship with Foxy Brown when she was just 15.
Jay-Z worked so fucking hard to change the narrative of...
Add that to Jay's known collaborations with R. Kelly, and people started seeing a disturbing pattern.
He's the acceptable monster at this time, like R. Kelly was the last time I sat on this couch.
Jay made a whole album with R. Kelly and even toured with him. And when Dame was asked why he distanced himself from Jay, he straight up said it was because Jay never distanced himself from R. Kelly. That's a big deal. So when people talk about Jay being another version of Diddy, yeah, they might be onto something.
Think about what Stack taught Sammie, okay? But before we talk about that, because I'm getting ahead of myself, let's talk about the other character, Sammie, for example. Who do you think Sammie might be in real life, right? When you put those worlds together. Think about who Sammie might be. And who does Sammie look like, right? Who did Stack took Sammie under his wing? Who did Diddy take under his wing in real life, right? Who's the young talent that Diddy took in and showed him the ropes, showed him how to deal with women, right? And who does Sammie look like, bruh? Let's be real. It's Usher, right? Right? Sammie look. I'm not even gonna lie. Look at the resemblance between Sammie and Usher. Okay, you cannot tell me that ain't little Usher. And the voice now. Come on now. Okay, now let's look at it. Sammie represents youth, right? Divine talent pursued in the industry, right? Not for who they are, but for what they have to offer. Okay, let's look at now. I want to say something. That might be a little crazy, but I think that Sammie represents multiple. I think every character represents multiple people in the industry, but let's say Sammie, for the sake of this metaphor and comparison, Sammie represents Usher and Justin Bieber, right? Think about what Diddy did to both of those two young men. On top of that, Usher was somebody who was sought after at a very young age, and so was Justin Bieber. They both started in the church. So was Sammie. Sammie was very highly sought after by the devil, right? By Remick. Remick said, I want Sammie. Y'all can give me Sammie. Sammie's going to be my ticket in. He's going to be my ticket to win, okay? And that was the same thing with Usher and Justin Bieber, all right? Michael Jackson ain't coined nobody the Prince of Pop but Usher, okay? And Justin Bieber had so many people preying on him at such a young age, saying that he is just the it child, the star of all stars, right? They both had that youth, that talent. They were groomed, right? What did Stack teach Sammie? Stack taught Sammie, right? Mind you, Smoke told Stack, don't do anything crazy. But Stack taught Sammie how to give a girl, you know what. And he did it, okay? And apparently he did it well, because Shorty came and she got up and she sang it, okay? She sang out. She was ready to go, okay? After Sammie done did what he did and she cheated on her husband, another sin, right? This whole movie is showing all the sins, or all the 7 deadly sins, and then some, right? And so that sin of her, she's an adulterer, and so was Mary. She was an adulterer, right? But we're not going to get into all that. That will have to be a way longer video. I'm going to focus on comparing the Diddy trials and to sinners in this particular video, because I can go on a rant, y'all, about this film. It's just that good. But let's get back to Sammie and Usher and Justin, right? The correlation between those three young men. They all have something in common, and I think Usher and Justin show two parallels to how things can have an outcome, right? So when you think about Sammie had a guitar, right? So I'm kind of going to get into this guitar now. Everything in this film was a metaphor. Let's talk about Sammie's guitar, right? And let's talk about Usher's, his talent, his power, his voice, right? Sammie's power, his voice. This guitar was more than just an instrument. This guitar represented purpose and salvation, okay? Here's the deeper message that the film was talking about with Sammie and his gift. Even when his own father, and his cousins told him, his cousin, right, Smoke, told him, don't stick with this, secular music right here. Sing music for the church, let go of that reckless guitar playing for this evil, right? Even when they told him to stop, that boy held on to that guitar for dear life. So much so, right? He even said that guitar made him feel like he wanted to fly, like he was flying high, right? When you think about this, we all have a purpose, something that makes us feel like we flying high. And people all around us are telling us, man, give up that dream, man, give up that thing, man, you don't need to do that, get a real job. But because Sammie held tight to his dream and his purpose and his God-given talent, which is what that guitar represented, that guitar saved his life. Because remember when he was about to be offed by Remick, after Smoke stepped in and saved him, right? He then saved Smoke and himself with that guitar. He took the guitar and whop, okay? He slapped that man harder than Will Smith slapped Chris Rock, okay? He said, whoosh, and that guitar went into Remic's head and made this huge sound, and it rippled, and it destroyed Remick, right? It destroyed the evil. But he didn't stop there. He kept the guitar in his hand the whole time. The whole time he kept that guitar in his hand, right? So he went to his father, and his father was hugging him saying, my child, I told you not to mess with the evil. He had a scar on his face from Remick, but he survived. He had a scar, but he survived. That scar represented his trauma, right? But he held on tight to this purpose, and that purpose not only freed him, but it gave him a future, right? It gave him a promise and future. It brought him success, because he then, became this big artist in the end. And we saw even in old age, this purpose, this guitar, was able to provide for the rest of his life and build a legacy for himself, right? He built a legacy based off of his dream, holding on to his dream. He was still holding on to it even after he was traumatized, even after his father was holding him in his arms, even after he was almost offed, right? So that's a huge metaphor, because think about Usher. Usher, after all the things that he done been through with Diddy and with the whole industry in general, as being a child in the industry, right? He held on tight to his soul, right? His gift, his talent. He stayed focused, right? And he continued. Whereas now, when you allow the industry to tear down your soul, then certain things happen. The use of substances happen, right? Things that might have happened to Justin, right? Sadly, sad to say. Now let's talk about other characters here, okay? Because it gets really deep. Let's talk about Mary, okay? Mary in the film. Think about Mary and who she is, okay? And who she was dating, right? Mary was dating not Smoke. Mary was dating Stack, who we said was Diddy, right? Stack represented that evil force, right? Beautiful, mulatto girl. So she was, she had some color in her, but for the most part, she was considered that like lighter, fair skin muse, right? The catalyst for the chaos. Think about what she interjected into the reality of the film. Not only did she show up as this demure and like this demure beauty, the untouchable one, the burn, you might not want to deal with these waters, the taboo. Mary was the one who got away with MURDER, right? She got away with a lot. She got away with that. She came into the party. First of all, they allowed her in, right? Which, when you think about colorism in the industry, I feel like this was a great representation of colorism in the industry. It was almost backwards colorism, because no one could come in unless they were Black in the party, right? In that party. However, she was able to move into any space. She was able to be that white girl when she wanted to be with her husband, right? Who got her into this fancy rich community. But then she also had the privilege of still being elevated to getting into a space that's considered almost untouchable or hard to get into, right? This gate-kept door that was hard to get into, she was able to get into that space. And so once she got in, then Stack was like, yo, what are these white folks? What do they want? When they came in and they tried to come in, no one knew if they could trust them, but they said, you know what? Go and see if you can trust these folks, right? She's the one who took it upon herself to do that, to be honest. Stack was kind of like, I don't know if you should go out there. But then he was like, you know what? See what's really good, right? So she saw what's really good. And now let's talk about the moment when she went to Remick, okay? And we're going to come back to the moment where she went to Remick and his minions, and Remick, she confided in Remick. We're gonna put a pin into that and come back to what that also meant, because something about that is a case of law in London, but we're gonna come back to that, okay? Now she went out there and they bit her, right? They made her a vampire. Now she comes in and she's the first one in that party to have gotten bitten. She's the catalyst for the whole movie and why everyone pretty much had a downfall, right? She comes in a different person. She's not herself, but she was the first one who was bitten. And then she spread that chaos, right? She spread that the darkness. She spread the evil. Her body was a vessel to be used to spread evil, right? Think about that. Her body was a vessel to be used to spread evil, okay? By Remick, by the quote unquote devil. Now we said that Diddy represents, or I should say, Remick represents Diddy, so to Stack, right? Two different sides of him, right? It's the him in his cover up, right? And then the him when he's behind closed doors. There's the freak off Diddy and then the puffy Diddy, right? In the industry, the charismatic face that he puts on. So when we think about that, her body was used to spread the evil and to spread the vampirism, the blood sucking, right? Think about Cassie. Diddy used her to spread, not just probably ST, whatever, right? But to spread more evil, to spread more hate. All these Smex workers that came in, right? All these artists that came in. She was a vessel and a catalyst to spread this evil, But also, once the truth was ready to come out, Cassie was also the catalyst to spread truth, right? She was the catalyst in both scenarios when it comes to that. And that's who Mary represented. Now let's talk about another person that Mary represented, another pretty light-skinned, beauty queen in the industry, right? Let's talk about Lauren London, okay? Now, a lot of people don't know that Lauren London, she was also one of these, close actress models that was around him, right? I don't know what they used to do. I don't know, I don't have any proof as to if they were together, right? It's alleged that they had something going on, as you can see from this clip here. And now there's speculation of her being an informant, really, to Diddy about Nipsey, right? To keep Nipsey in check. Now, if you don't remember, Lauren London was the one who introduced Nipsey to Diddy. Think about that. The same way that Mary is introducing the whole party, right, to the evil. But let's talk about when Mary confided in Remick about her loss, and Remick and his minions said, when they said, ooh, loss, when she lost her mom, right? Mary lost her mom and she confided in Remick and his minions and they said, ooh, loss is a pain feeling. It's a pain feeling. It's a hurting feeling, right? When Lauren London lost Nip, she came to Diddy. She came to Diddy often. She confided in Diddy often. She confided in somebody who's considered evil in the industry often.
Didn't act alone, that he had someone close to Nipsey feeding him info, someone who wouldn't raise suspicion. And all fingers are starting to point toward Lauren London.
Hook up with the biggest rapper at the time. Everything's great. By the way, isn't she? Lauren is the one that introduced Nip to Diddy. Diddy couldn't even get to Nip, even though he had ties in L.A. It was Lauren that brought Nip to him.
And even Nipsey confirmed it on the Breakfast Club when he was alive.
Nip ain't know what type of monster he was. Lauren?
No, I'm saying Lauren introduced me to Puff.
Oh, got you.
I knew Puff, but it was more of a personal relationship after, we was at Cassie's birthday.
And once you look at it that way, the whole story starts to shift. Fans are wondering if she was just a girlfriend or if she was Diddy's inside player. A lot of people believe she was placed there to keep Nipsey in check, to monitor his moves, maybe even manipulate decisions. The streets have been buzzing for a while that Lauren and Diddy had a really close relationship, too close. There have been speculations that she was one of Diddy's mule or yacht girl, just like Young Miami, and this is why she has been called in by the court. Old pictures have resurfaced showing Lauren and Diddy looking way too comfortable. Meanwhile, Nipsey's right there in the background, looking like the third wheel. After Nipsey passed, Lauren did an interview with Angie Martinez, and that's where things got really strange.
So I did this 2-day seminar on death.
Why were you there, and what did you learn?
I learned that no one really dies, and that, it's just an experience in the physical form, and we're attached to our personalities, but that we're just souls, and that we continue and continue and continue. And if you have a spiritual relationship with someone on earth, you will have one with them when you leave earth. So.
And this was how long ago?
I had to be 25.
What sent you there? Do you find that weird though?
I'm weird.
No, it's not weird that you would go. It's almost like you were preparing yourself for what you would have to deal with.
Well, I told you I didn't have connection to earth at a young age.
I know, but you don't find that as you were preparing yourself for what you were going to have to deal with.
Well, that we're all going to have to deal with.
It's almost like she knew something was coming.
When Lauren London confided in Diddy, it led to more evil, right? When you connect yourself with those forces, it leads to more evil. When Mary confided in evil, it led to more evil. And those evil energies is what led to Nipsey's downfall. Just like the Smokestack Twins and Sinners, Nipsey had a vision rooted in legacy, community, economic freedom, a blueprint for Black empowerment. But he was doing so with alleged demons by his side, Diddy and Lauren London. When you build with demons at your side, don't be surprised when blood ends up in the foundation. Both Nipsey and the Smokestack Twins had dreams that were financed by blood. As you may remember, the Smokestack brothers came home with stolen money from their dirty deals in Chicago, hoping to flip it into freedom for their people. But just like the Smokestack Twins, Nipsey wasn't always innocent. His rise began in the streets too, gangbanging and drug dealing, not out of malice, but out of necessity. It was survival, feeding his family, funding his vision. It was the only way he knew at the time. But Nipsey grew, he evolved, he matured into something greater, a man of purpose, a man with a mission. His hunger for legacy wasn't just personal, it was spiritual. His Life After Death album was more than music, it was prophecy. He wanted his name to ring in eternity. That kind of thirst and hunger, that's God-given, it's sacred. But here's the truth, darkness is drawn to light. Demons crave the glow of purpose, the fire of legacy, the holiness of someone trying to build something eternal.
That's what Nipsey wanted, the same energy, vibe, and legacy. Now let that sink in. That's the same album that dropped after Biggie got taken out.
Now, you taking a spiritual person who's asking for something. He said, I wanted that same feel as Life After Death. That same feel was that Biggie got and he went on to sell about 10 million albums. I was saying, you gotta watch what you say to demons, because it just might come true.
According to Gene, that move right there was Nipsey's biggest mistake, because once Diddy got involved, he got his hooks in deep. Suddenly, Nipsey was spending more time at Diddy's mansion than in the studio.
Nipsey's light didn't just inspire. It attracted. Like a moth to a flame, his brilliance pulled in everyone, admirers, yes, but also predators, people like Diddy and Lauren London. Not because they loved his mission, but because they wanted access to that glow. Just like the Smokestack Twins and Sinners, their fire burning with dreams, with ambition, with plans to uplift their people, that called in Remick and Mary, the mirror of Diddy and Lauren London. The ideological representation of people who mirror Diddy and Lauren London in the industry. Nipsey and the twins didn't walk into evil. They drew it in. Because when your light is that bright, it's not just the righteous who notice. The shadows see you too. That's a huge lesson that this film is showing. Now let's talk about the invitation. Once Mary bit Stack and people started getting bit left and right, the security guard got bit, right? The vampires needed consent to get in. They needed consent to get into the party. And so does exploitation in the industry, right? Everyone lured into the party, the juke joint. They said yes to a deal, a temptation, a taste of something greater. Before anyone even became a vampire, Stack and Smoke had to ask all these talented people, hey, I want you to come on with me. I want you to come on to what we got going on. Think about it like this. I want to talk about Annie for a second. Annie represents those in the community of artistry and entrepreneurship and whatever it is. A person, a normal person, a person who has a soul, who is a healer, who is a spiritual person, maybe even Christians, right? Annie represents the good, right? And you even saw she wore white, and that's, part of the red, white, and blue. The white color represents innocence and purity. Annie represented that pure innocence, right? But still, she knew what was right and wrong. She even said to Smoke when he came to her, she said, don't give me that money. I don't want no blood money, right? She said, I don't want that death money, whatever you got going on in Chicago. She didn't want none of that, okay? She told him straight to his face, I will not take your blood money. I'm better than that. I'm a healer. I'm spiritual. I'm high, right? I'm high on life. I don't need that. And yet, like many industry healers and truth tellers, right? She, even though she said no, there was a price for her to go, right? And she eventually got seduced by Smoke. Literally, right? And she said yes to him. She said, you know what, I will come with you. And then she didn't, you know what I'm saying? He got her to do. So that's a sin even before they started sinning. So she took his blood money and she had schmacks with him. To her defense, not many women could say no to Michael B. Jordan. However, so it's understandable. However, she said yes, and that yes became her downfall. Okay, so compare this with stories like artists like Cassie, Usher, even Kid Cudi, right? People who once said yes to something that they knew potentially had evil connected to it, and then later to reveal that there was trauma, right, embedded in that fine print. Just to tie in some of these points, right, these key points, in both Sinners and Diddy's alleged history, right, there's a theme of grooming. Stack teaching his young cousin about Shemex, right? Diddy allegedly, hosting these parties and underage attendees. There's a thin line between mentorship and manipulation. It's a dangerous one. And Coogler doesn't shy away from exposing the exploitation that these industry or that these people in power subject these young, innocent folks to, right? The grooming happens behind closed doors under the guise of family and opportunity or love, right? But it becomes that person's demise when they realize that they're dealing with evil. And Diddy being a black man who exploits his own people is actually even more ironic than I had originally realized, being that Remick is Irish and they have somewhat of a congruent history to African Americans. Take a look at this clip that perfectly breaks this down.
Why is the vampire in Sinners Irish? It's not random. It's actually the whole point. Remick lived through British rule over Ireland, colonization, cultural suppression. Sound familiar? It mirrors the black experience in America. Slavery, Jim Crow, and sets the stage for the film's deeper themes. But here's the twist. Remick assimilates into whiteness. Instead of standing against oppression, he becomes part of it, preying on black communities for his own survival. Even the music reflects it. Remick brings old Irish folk songs into a world built on the blues. It's cultural appropriation, literal vampirism, feeding off black creativity. Ryan Coogler said himself, Irish folk and blues both come from pain. But Sinners shows how survival can turn into exploitation. Remick isn't just a monster. He's a reminder that history isn't as far behind us as we think.
Remick had proximity to whiteness, to status, to unchecked privilege. Like Remick, Diddy stood at the gates of immense power, wealth, and cultural influence. But instead of using that access to liberate the people who came from the same struggle, he allegedly chose to leverage their gifts for his own gain. Remick didn't just feed off of their music. He commodified their souls, seduced them into surrender, and drained their essence to extend his own power. Diddy, too, is accused of building his empire not through upliftment, but through exploitation, feeding off the youth, talent, and vulnerability of the very people he could have empowered. In both cases, they became the demonic monsters that they once appeared to fight. Let's take a quick look at what DMX and Prodigy had to say about Diddy and Jay-Z.
There's an old interview where DMX straight up accused Diddy of R-wording his artists, and he hinted at some seriously dark stuff happening behind the scenes at Bad Boy Records. Now, some fans believe DMX was using the term to call out Diddy for financially exploiting people, but others think he meant it literally, especially in light of all the allegations that came out about Diddy over the last couple of years.
And this isn't the only thing that DMX talked about. He also talked about how there were people in the industry that basically wanted to take you out to dinner and stuff to get a hold of your music. And you cannot tell me that DMX was not talking about Diddy, because the first thing that I thought of is when 50 Cent said that Diddy asked to take him shopping.
Now, when it comes to Jay-Z, after he became president of Def Jam in 2004, DMX claimed Jay started blocking the release of his 6th album, Year of the Dog, again. And according to X, it was all because Jay decided not to retire after all and wanted to get rid of the competition.
You know, like I said, I had the crazy track record, Def Jam, everything was good. You know, I go to do the 6th album, and, you know,
Jay-Z became president.
Yeah. You know, when he first got the job, he hit me with the call like, yo, dog, inmates just running the building like, yo, you good? Finish the album, shoot the video. What happened? You know, we don't know. What you mean you don't know? How do you listen to a whole album, pick a single, shoot a video, then don't know?
But X's disgust of Jay ran deeper. A big part of it was about who Jay was tied to behind the scenes, namely people like Lair Cohen, the same guy who openly admitted to pushing substance use culture through artists he signs, even though he knows it's fueling the opioid crisis. And let's be real, most of Prodigy's fans never believed that whole egg story anyway. A lot of them still think he was silenced because he was digging too deep and speaking too openly about the Illuminati and the elite circle that Jay-Z and Diddy are allegedly tied to. So when you look at everything DMX and Prodigy said, the names they dropped, the secrets they exposed, and the dark agendas they warned us about, it's hard not to wonder if they were targeted for speaking out. Both men called out Jay-Z and Diddy and the shadowy forces running the industry, and both died under suspicious circumstances. Coincidence? Or were they silenced for getting too close to the truth? What do you think?
Now let's step even deeper into the rabbit hole of comparisons. Stack's downfall began at a party, so did Diddy's, right? Remick seeks power through eternal youth. So did the conspiracy theories around Diddy's obsession with the young staying on top, right? The twins fled a bloody crime and reinvented themselves. So did Diddy, you know, after some people say after the Biggie and Tupac issue, right? I don't want to get too much into East Coast versus West Coast, but when you think about it, after the whole passing of Biggie and Tupac, Diddy reinvented sort of the label, right? And just went on about the business. This was a few years after, but still, the two twins fled a crime and reinvented themselves, created a whole new business plan, and just kept it moving with that blood money, right? A lot of people allege that that's what Diddy did, right? The vampires walk among us in suits, smile, charming, you know, some most rich, right? And so do these predators in real life. And in both worlds, the church, the music, and the dream itself is what is fighting back for truth, right? When you even think about it, I want to say Maya, a quick reference to Maya is a great example of what happens. This movie is a prophecy. It's prophetic. It's trying to teach us something. I mean, when you think about it, Maya is a great example of what this film is trying to teach us, right? That those who say no, those who avoid the parties altogether, right? They stay spiritually intact. Were never seen again, but they stayed alive and thrived.
Not anyone from Rock Nation has ever publicly addressed it, but Maya has made one thing clear. She turned down things that didn't feel right. And in this industry, that's often all it takes to be marked.
How did you stay so guarded within your career?
This is what I did. I said, no, I'm good, thank you. No, thank you.
In the years following Maya's fallout, the blackball wasn't imagined. It was earned for saying no.
And you have to not be desperate. You have to be willing to say, I'm good, and walk away.
By the time Maya made the decision to leave the industry system behind, she understood exactly what she was walking away from. There was no dramatic exit, no official statement, but her absence from the places she once occupied was intentional. Saying no to certain people meant losing access to nearly everything that came with the machine. The marketing, the radio placement, the award shows, and the press coverage.
Right? Sometimes it's not about trying to be seen. Sometimes it's not about fame and saying yes to the invitation, right? The money might sound nice. The promise of forever being abundant might sound nice, but when you think about it, is it really worth your soul and your life? Ask Q from Day 26. Ask Justin Bieber. You know, is it really worth what the price was? Ask Justin Bieber's mom. Bless that woman's heart. having a son and having to deal with a son who has so much trauma. Sinners is a sermon disguised as a horror, a warning, right? It's a warning cloaked in rhythm and blood. The Diddy trials is not just a scandal, it is an echo of every warning Black storytellers, musicians, and prophets have been shouting for generations to be real. This is a reckoning long overdue. If you still think this is just a coincidence, ask yourself, how many more artists have to say, I saw the devil, before we admit that he's been sitting in the front row all along? All right, it's your girl Sakinah Iman, and thank you guys so much for watching. I want to leave you with this, and whether it's fiction or fact or something in between, we owe it to ourselves to look closer, to question the systems, to honor the truth hiding in plain sight, even when it's wrapped in rhythm, glitter, or gospel. This has been more than a breakdown. This has been a mirror, a metaphor, and maybe even a moment of atonement. I'm Sakinah Iman, filmmaker, storyteller, and believer in the kind of art that doesn't just entertain, but awakens. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay brave, stay curious, and above all else, stay in your truth. Peace.